Hi, guys. How are you?
How are you?
Hi, guys. What's going on? Finances first?
Oh, no.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Let me get the masks.
It's, personnel.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want me to.
No.
Right.
No, I kept thinking that was
I know. It's my personality. Personality. I gotta get the right snowplow.
Oh, okay. Can't see nothing without my glasses. All right, 4 o'clock, we're gonna call the Personnel Committee meeting to order. First, let's start with courtesy of the floor. Is there anyone here who would like to address Personnel Committee? Seeing no one, we'll do a review of the county executive's reappointments. Area Agency on Aging. Let's see, sorry, I just gotta find them. All right, in front of me here I have a few names. For the Area Agency on Aging Advisory Board, reappointments, terms to expire 6/30/23. I have Elaine A. Arntz from Easton, Mary Jane Long from Easton, and Mary Jane McAteer from Easton, and Paul Nagy from Hellertown. So, any discussion, questions, concerns? If there are none, do I have a motion to move these on?
So moved.
Thank you. All right, we'll have these on the meeting on Thursday. And next we have review of personnel reclassifications, Department of Human Services, Children, Youth, and Families Division. And, oh, wait a minute,
That's what I see.
never mind. We're cool. All right, we have, forgot the regular glasses that I usually wear. All right, what we're doing is we have a request to that the position of Accountant 1, pay grade HS 35-3C, salary of $47,707. Oh, I thought you just said put this out. Why am I reading? All right.
This breaks it down on the next page, I believe.
Hold it. We're going to reset here for a second.
I think that's right.
You got a lozenge or something you want to unwrap. Right ahead. All right. Here we go. We'll try this again. Fiscal Officer 1, pay grade HS 38A to Fiscal Tech Supervisory, pay grade 33. Current salary is Step 2B, 52,166 annually. Requested salary, Step 6F, 49,920. And then I'll go through the two of them, and then if you have any questions. The next is an Accountant 1, pay grade HS 35 to Accountant 2, pay grade HS 38A. Current salary, 3C, $47,770 annually. Requested salary, 38A, Step 1A, would be $49,920. Justification, They reviewed job duties and are realigning them to fit existing employees' strengths and skill sets. And they're asking us to consider this. Are there any questions? Oh, do you want to come up and, come on up. Mr. Lott, did you have a question? Do you want to say anything before he asks your question, or? You just want to
Sure.
wait?
Really, in preparing for Linda Lewis's, who's our head accountant for children and youth, her retirement, we've been analyzing the accounting division down in children and youth, and the fiscal tech, or the fiscal officer, was, that position, for whatever reason, was really not doing the accounting duties of that job, and those are being done by the accountant one. And so, in order to have everybody still on board and find the best positions that suit their skills and strengths, we are downgrading the fiscal officer to a fiscal tech supervisor and upgrading the accountant one to accountant two. So the fiscal tech supervisor won't have accounting duties per se, and the accountant one position will pick up those extra accounting duties. And ultimately, the job that Linda Lewis is currently in is an accountant 3. And so it is the logical, it's logical to have a 2 somewhere in there, and not necessarily the person who's in there now. I'm not saying that in terms of being promoted, but to have that for long-term succession planning.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Kevin? Go ahead.
I'm not on the committee, but,
Go ahead.
I mean, that makes sense. You're taking responsibility and off of one and putting it on another, and you're following the money with the responsibility. These are existing employees, I believe I heard. So we're reducing an existing employee's
So this
wages.
said employee is very comfortable with this, in fact, prefers this, because the accounting duties have not, for many, many years, were not delegated to this individual long before I got here and before Julie was in charge. So I can't answer why that was, but it's not necessarily in her wheelhouse, and rather than continue down that frustrating path.
Well, I was deciding how I was gonna ask that, but you answered it. You know,
Yeah.
so the employee is comfortable taking
Correct.
a pay cut with reduction of duties. Interesting.
I think appreciative, and is very happy doing what she does.
Wow.
And is appreciative she can do, that her job will now fit what she actually does.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good for her. I never appreciated it. All right. Are there any other questions? Yeah, Mr.
Just a quick point, we're saving $103, am I
Yes, sir.
correct?
Well, I was going to say 80, because I think that's what somebody ballparked me, but I'm sure you're correct.
Okay, well, it sounds good, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My only question is, Cindy Smith is your
Yes.
fiscal guru. She also is
Yes.
aware, and she thought,
Yep.
agreed with
Yeah,
this?
this has been probably a 3 to 4 month discussion and
Yeah.
process and figuring out how to best do it so we can keep everybody who's really good at what they do in the county and not lose anybody.
Yeah, good. Okay, no, that's fine. I mean, you guys know what's going on. I just wanted to ask about
Yep.
Cindy because she, when it comes to the fiscal and human services, we're fortunate to have someone like that. Okay, any other questions on this? If not, we'll move it forward. Anybody want to say move it forward?
Motion to move forward.
Thank you, Bill McGee. Thank you. And now we have another one. All right. Where's my other one? Here we are. This has to do with CYF. I was cleaning out my computer so you can see why I'm a bit, I haven't reviewed this. I reviewed some of it at home though. All right. I saw that you, attached are the 8 positions that have been approved by the Governor's Office and the Office of Children, Youth, and Family in Harrisburg. All positions requested will be funded 80% funds with a 20% match. I could go through all of this. You all have it in front of you, I believe, so I'm not going to read this entire thing. But, I mean, it basically comes up to 8 positions, 4 county caseworker 2s, a casework supervisor, clerk typist 2, a social services aide, a caseworker 2 position. But why is the one, intake, that's for intake, and these are for retention. Do you want to address this?
Sure.
Go right ahead.
Sure. Bear with me, some of this I will read just
Get
because it's
reused to the
easier.
mask. Fuck.
It's a whole new readjustment. So the majority of these positions are to bring the final conclusion, I hope for at least a decade, of the ratios of supervisor to caseworker and caseload size for caseworkers. So I certainly can go through each of the positions. The good news, I will just tell you right off the bat, is we just submitted the first part of our budget to the state for next year for children and youth, and we are requesting 0 positions. So unless lightning strikes and something else changes, which is possible, but let's hope not, I won't be back here again for this next year.
So can I don't want to interrupt, but
go ahead.
I have to, in my head, I get it straight. So we're doing these this year because you feel with your budget, you can handle this year. But next year then, for the next year through the county budget, you're not planning at this point. I'll just say
Correct.
plan, I don't want to box anybody in. Planning
No, correct.
to
And
not, okay.
the budget that was,
But this
the
would
budget that
work
I'm-
in this budget, because I saw it said funded.
correct. The budget that we just submitted to the state is the needs-based budget that we submit a year ahead of time. So in that one for next year, we are not asking for any new positions. These are the positions we asked for a year ago, and we got approval in May or June. And so, till we get all the paperwork
All
done,
right,
it's
I'm sorry to
July.
interrupt you.
Oh,
I
you're
just wanted
fine.
to get that clear. Go ahead.
Sure.
Finish your.
Sure.
presentation.
So, the one caseworker that was sort of out there floating by itself, we added a screening, we added additional caseworker staff to our screening unit. And those are the folks who get the phone calls with all the referrals to determine if they need to be screened in for investigation or if it's safe to screen those out, which has had some pretty amazing results. So far, they are sending far fewer cases. They're located on the first floor, so we always say they send far fewer cases upstairs to the second floor, which is children and youth. The downside is the second floor, the cases they actually get are more challenging. But so one of the positions is to add to the GPS intake in order to assist with the burden of some of those more challenging cases. And that will bring the caseload ratios down to where the state is moving to for them to be both supervisor to caseworker and caseload. Any questions about that one?
Any questions? Go ahead.
Okay. The 4 additional county caseworker 2s are a little different. And I believe I'm told that there was a time that we had this. It's sort of a second shift or a middle shift caseworker that works, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. The volume of cases and the kind of cases we're getting, one of the biggest reasons for folks leaving is they don't have any normal schedule and they can't predict at what point in time of day they're actually going to be able to go home. So we have, young staff or staff with young families and they want to be able to get home at least most of the time. Understandably, it's not going to be all the time. So the thought was previously when they had these, they ended up removing them because caseloads had gone up and there was vacancies, and so we shuffled around. This was prior to Julie and I, and we'd like to bring those back. So those caseworkers won't actually have a caseload. They will be the ones to pick up the extra calls that came in the night before. They will be the ones when there's an emergency placement that they can assist with that. In those after hours, when there's visits that come up or that have to be done that the day shift caseworkers can't get to, those folks can help with that. Maggie Dubin, who retired from Iris a year or so ago, she was one person who used to pick up visits and placements and such for people all the time. So this sort of brings that back, but in a more structured and permanent way. So that's what those 4 county caseworker 2s are that are non-case carrying. Questions?
Yeah, any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Bill.
Sorry, I didn't turn my mic off. Real quick, actually, it's actually on the first couple. The $29,157 salary. Now, how many hours a year do they work?
So those are the clerk typist positions.
And I know they're entry-level
Yep.
positions.
So they're 40-hour-a-week positions.
40 hours, okay, all right, okay. All right. And, okay, I'm just, I mean, I understand, and believe me, let me just start with this. I know how how much work that must have went into all the thought process behind this and putting it together, and I appreciate, the administration and the department putting it together. I just think that it's, it's a challenge, right, so.
It is in the union contract and
Right.
civil service rates,
Sure.
and
Sure. That's what they started at.
I
Okay.
hear you, though.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So,
Are there any other questions? If not, I have a question, and I'll just ask it real quick if I
Sure.
can. I want to go down to the 4. So what happens now is, I was just curious, as I read through it at home and I was looking at it now. So we have, how many staff did you say now are doing this end-of-day thing?
We don't have any staff who are specifically in this role. We previously had staff who would go out after hours for us
Yes.
regularly. But now we don't have any. So every caseworker for their own cases are going out, after 4 or 4:30 or whatever their normal work hours are. A lot.
To follow up on emergencies
Whether
or,
it's an emergency placement, whether it's.
because usually you had somebody on call. Does that
If it
even?
starts during the day, we try to
Oh,
keep,
they're
so this
finishing
is stuff
up.
that starts during the day.
Okay.
So we're trying to finish it. So we try to obviously keep consistency. We don't want to disrupt a placement with one person starting it, another person finishing.
So let me
it,
ask you a
outlet.
question, though, and I'm just curious on the function of this. So when these people come in and they're going to do the 11 to 7 thing, let's say somebody started something who's on a regular schedule, would they then sit down with the person and go over what's going on and hand it off to them?
I don't have the procedures fully implemented, but if somebody's, it really just depends. The idea is for it not to be, I'm in the middle of something and now you pick it up. The idea is, I know I have this 30-day home visit I have to get done, and it has to be done today, and I was supposed to go this morning and I got tied up, but somebody else can do that for me, and so they have the case history, right, case summaries. So that's like kind of, I'll call it the warm handoff. There are also policies in place that if I'm the assigned caseworker on a case, I can't have another caseworker go out and do my home visits more than every other month. It's something to that effect, right? So you're not.
So
the
there's
idea is the same
limiting
caseworker is
policies that are
supposed to
going to
be-
go with this.
Yes, it's not a dump job, like,
Okay. No, I mean, I was just curious because, you get involved
Sure.
calling vendors and you're placing, and I didn't know, the idea sounds great. I was just curious about the logistics because
Sure.
I do know you can get caught up and be out for hours after your time and,
this certainly will not solve.
No.
Like, our other caseworkers are going to have to go out after hours sometimes. The idea is that this will hopefully significantly reduce that and at least make those after hours a little bit more predictable so people can better plan and know when they're going to be home with their families and when they're going to be at work.
okay. Well, anything that can help turnover in children, youth, and families would be.
And that's one of the biggest reasons right
I
now.
mean, you got to take chances now and then on a new idea and see if it works.
Sure.
So,
Well, and I think it was effective in the past. It just,
yeah,
like
just sort
all
of faded
things,
away.
Yep.
Things
So,
happen to do that sometimes in human services.
yes,
and other
we
places.
do.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions?
So I can finish up then just the other couple and then I can.
Oh, there's more?
Well, so the other, there's one casework supervisor, and that's simply to bring it down into the ratios.
Yeah.
And the clerk typist 2 positions and social service aide position, there's only one clerk typist 2 and one social service aide. The idea of adding them is, I think, we've had some retirements in clerical, and we have found ways to, I guess, maximize our efficiencies there. And I'm frequently asked about, the paperwork and has that been reduced, and the answer is still no. But I think we're getting better at finding things that our clerical staff can do for our caseworkers. And so by adding another clerical person, they will have some specific responsibilities that will be taken off of the caseworkers. And the same with the social service aide, except that's primarily transportation and supervision of visits with birth families. So, to sort of preemptively answer the question like I usually try to do, yes, we have vacancies, and my magic answer is still, we have to be out of civil service. And I do believe we are getting closer. Obviously, we're still not there. The more positions we have, even when there are turnovers, there's still more bodies in seats with lower caseloads. But when I don't anticipate filling all of the vacancies until we're out of civil service. It just is, we've been through all that, I won't reiterate it. But based on the ongoing contact I still have with other counties, including Bucks, I just recently asked, I think they had 3 or 4 vacancies in CYF, they're out of civil service. So I am totally confident once we're out of civil service that there'll always be some vacancies, but if we could keep that under 5, that would be phenomenal. That's my goal. Okay, that's it, Mr. Heckman.
Okay, well, any questions or any follow-up on that? If not, oh, go ahead, Mr. Myers.
How competitive are we with the other counties when it comes to salaries in these positions?
Actually, I can't tell you that off the top of my head, but I can tell you that we have been acquiring that information from our 2 local counties as we are undergoing contract negotiations.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion to push this forward?
Motion.
All right, so motion's made, we'll review this, discuss, debate this, and vote, possible vote tomorrow night. Thank you. Next, we have the review of the Department of Human Services pay scale resolution. I don't know, I understand how this works, but people don't want to hear me. Ms. Wondolowski, do you want to explain? I've been told numerous times they don't need to hear me. So, do you want to
Sure.
give them how this whole deal works with the state?
The state is the body that sets the maximum rates on all of the pay scales. They are updated every year, and the top of the pay scale, well, the entire pay scale is adjusted. It impacts a few people who are at the top of the scale, because when you're at the top of the scale, you don't get, you can't keep moving up in terms of you don't get additional steps. There are no more steps to be had. So when they raise the state max, it impacts the folks at the top, and they get a little bit more money. I believe there was only 4 or 5 folks who this impacted at the top of the scale. Ideally, the state would provide us with the updated scales, once a year. But I think we got one sometime this year, and I think we got 2 more sets that are maybe on here. So, go figure, they kind of got updated all at one time, so.
Okay, are there any questions on this? This is a routine thing that occurs, and we just try to keep up with it. And despite what some people think, we can't pay people more and just tell the state we want more money.
Correct. Does not work that way.
That's not how it works. I don't know if anybody still says that, but that was a common theme for many years, that, because you just get the money.
Correct. You get reimbursed what you get reimbursed, and you have to follow the scales.
All right.
So.
Fine, if there are no, I'm sorry, Ms. Zirinsky.
Thank you. I just have a question. It says here that this is to revise the 2020 and 2021 Human Services Civil Service non-union administrative staff pay.
Yes.
So that pay scale. So what happens to the union employees?
Well, I actually
they're in
didn't.
a contract, right? So
Yeah.
their pay isn't going to change. Because
Well,
of the
there's
scale.
pay scales for union staff as well.
Okay.
So I actually didn't realize which ones were in there. I thought they were for for both union and non-union. So,
It specifically says non-union
okay,
in each paragraph.
they get, the union staffs get raised by the state around the same time every year. So I can follow up on that to check if those were the ones we already brought to council. But even though they have a contract with us, they also get raised by the state. And for example, we have folks then who are at the top of the scale, and in lieu of steps, they get different payouts and such. When the scale gets raised, they get the difference in a retro
We
check.
did get pay scales. I think there's two separate ones, Tara,
There are.
in your packet.
It all says non-union.
Okay,
NPSSU.
That's what it said. So, yeah. The money man's coming up.
Yeah, I'm
something.
just,
It is both scales. It just affects the state maximums at the top of the scale. In the contracts for the union, the state maximums are clearly laid out. There's also a council ordinance from years and years and years ago that we do not pay above the state maximums, and we put in the minimum amount required to draw down the maximum amount of money. With that council ordinance that we have in place, we have to update these pay scales when the state comes out with the new money to be compliant with county law. So even with PSSU
okay.
agreements, that's the way it works. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that what we had in front of us was everything.
Yes, it is everything.
All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Before you
I
leave,
really
maybe
appreciate that.
Mr. Myers,
Now, this is for union and non-union personnel. Does that also count for your supervisory people?
Yes, so the non-union are your supervisors. So all of those grades that you see within the list there cover those maximums, minimums, the state maximums. Yeah, exactly. There are 5 employees. And those retirees do also get the retro pay. They work part of the scale. Exactly.
Okay, I see.
all right. Are there any other questions? Yeah, I think what happened, Steve, and I know there's one person here who was around then, but the late 80s, Human Services had a big problem. They spent more than they had in their budget. And I mean, pretty much the easiest way to say it, deficit spending. So going into the 90s, a few of those things were put in place where it said, you know, you got to pay, we're not going to go above that. And that was, some folks over the years have said you should get rid of it. I don't think there's a need to get rid of it, but you know, it's up to whatever you guys, but I understand, I'm fine with it. Anybody have any other questions? Oh, Mr. Myers, go ahead.
Just clarification for me. How are these steps accomplished?
So for the non-union folks, it's based on what county council approves in the budget proposed by the county executive. For the union pay scales, it's based on what's negotiated at the table. In this case, it would be with PSSU. So the scales are put together. If a cost of living is granted for PSSU, this whole scale is adjusted. If a step is granted, a step is given without the pay scales being adjusted. If it's a combination of both, depends on the situation.
Are you done, Mr. Myers?
Yep.
Ms.
What?
Zirinsky?
Yeah. I just want to ask a question about why does the pay scale for the union only go up to 38 years? And
38 steps, you mean?
38 steps, and the non-union goes up to 47. It seems that when you get to the highest level on a union, that doesn't match up.
So there's a history lesson in that. The union pay scales are a little bit different. The PSSU pay scale is at, 2.25%. They had shrunk their steps at one point, so that, steps were easier, I guess, to grant because it's not 4.5% like in the career service. So there was a little bit more maneuvering, I guess, in the wisdom of the people at the table. That being the case, now we compare it to other pay scales. It's kind of, I guess it's what they decided they wanted and presented at the table. So when that happened, they came up with these pay scales, negotiated, and then we try to mirror them throughout that division, those departments, so that it's as uniform as we could possibly be, while meeting the state maximum requirements in the law. Does that, did I say that correctly enough? I hope I answered your question.
When you look at, it seems, mathematically, and I'm not a math genius, but if you're a union worker and your annual pay is capped at 38 years at $77,456, and if you're a non-union employee, your max is capped at 83,387.
I mean,
in 39 years, why wouldn't you
It's-
just stop paying union dues at 38 years?
a lot of it is based on supervisory positions. It's where the state maximums fall in. There's a lot of factors that go into a lot of these positions.
So is this the state legislature saying dividing these two pay scales and basically giving a little bit more to non-union in a sense?
No. Those positions are supervisory positions. They also come with a lot more responsibility.
Okay.
So the state doesn't necessarily get involved in what our pay scales are.
Oh.
That's negotiated at the table. That is set based on where you live. So the state maximums are set on based on where you live. Those positions are then given a range by the state, which we match based on what we reimburse, and the cost of living in our specific area.
Okay.
So,
I do feel like I need a tutorial on this.
it's human services so when I say some of these positions don't cost us as much money, some positions are funded at 90%, some at 80%. So there's even a different formula that goes in based on what the job is the person does. Some 100, yeah, exactly. So
And so this is just represents the maximum.
it represents a uniform pay scale that fits everybody, so that we are able to pay people reasonably and not make mistakes, and we
Well,
follow
also
and comply comply with all the laws.
Okay.
And if you have specific questions and you want to ask them later on, if you want to give me a call, I'll be happy to talk it through with you.
Yeah. All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
Are there any other questions? Oh, Mr. Kusick.
Just to answer that question, as someone who's been on a union pay scale for over 20 years, there is no simple answer to your question. I mean, there are some years you get a percentage, some years you get a step, and the same thing applies here. So it may seem simple, like, oh, you start out when you're 22 or 23 and you move up 38 steps and, retire with a big pension. But unfortunately, I see a hedge. That is simply not the case.
So it's not like it appears on paper.
Correct.
For X number of years, you are compensated this much. That is not how this actually works.
No, it is not. In an ideal world, that's how it would, but this is the real world. So, yeah, you don't always make those steps. Sometimes you get percentages, sometimes you get frozen, depending upon the budget. Who knows?
So what happens if you get stuck on a step and don't move forward?
Well, sometimes you get a percentage rather than a step. It's not the best thing, but, if you need a job and want to do it, that's what you do.
This is like chutes and ladders. It's like you go up and then you go, like, none of this makes sense. I guess in the real world, this is how it is, but I would think that real people would like some preparation on what it is that they can project what they're going to make, but that's not how this all works. I get it, okay.
This is the government world.
What?
Crystal ball with what the budget will be over 30 years, maybe.
Wow, okay. Thank God that all of our employees stay, you know? We have to give them a lot of credit for. No different than the education program. No, I get it,
Okay. All right.
By the
But
goodness-
Tara, next time we'll go over needs-based budgeting and how the state looks at your needs-based budget and how they deal with that. So you'll love that discussion.
No.
But anyway, it's very scientific. They look into it very deeply. All right.
I bet, like,
Are there any questions?
no.
Further questions? If not, can we move this pay scale? This is, council sets pay scales. We've got to vote for it in order for them to do it. So I have a motion to move this forward.
Motion to move.
Oh, thank you, Mr. McGee. And I believe that ends the personnel part of our meeting, unless there's something else for personnel. If not, we will jump to Bill McGee and his Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
yours.
Hackman. Good afternoon, everyone. The Finance Committee will get started here. I'm the chairman, William McGee. We have John Cusick on the committee, who's here, Ron Heckman, and Lori Vargo Hefner. The first order of business is courtesy of the floor. Seeing none, we're going to move on to, I see Mr. Tony Basile is here. The controller has a few reports that he would like to go over with council at the committee.
Before Mr. Basile starts, may I ask a question
Please.
of Mr. Barron? Where'd you get that cool badge mask you're wearing? Are you part of the auxiliary sheriff's department or what? Oh, okay. All right, just curious.
He'll get you one.
I don't know if I didn't know if you were wearing it to get out of parking tickets or what, but anyway, I'm sorry, Mr. Basile. I
No,
hope
it's
that
okay.
wasn't disrespectful
Anyway,
to you.
I need everybody to excuse me. I just had my booster shot
Oh.
yesterday, and
Okay.
I'm not feeling great, so Mr. Sabino gonna present my reports.
Great. It's great to see you.
I didn't wanna miss the meeting.
Awesome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'll be as brief as possible, and questions are obviously welcome, because we have a number of reports this time. The first one we have on the list there is called ACL Checks and Vendors. This is an agreed-upon procedure engagement, which means that the procedures are set in stone before we get started. This is something we developed a number of years ago using our software called ACL, which takes every check that was issued by the county in an entire year and subjects it to an analytical, computer-based analytical process. So we're able to look at all kinds of protocols and things. And normally we do end up finding things because we are looking at 100% sample rather than a smaller sample. A couple of the things that we did find here that are of interest, we did find some payments that were not just duplicated, but triplicated, if such a word exists. So we discovered that, and we did get the county reimbursed a small amount, $634. But there were some internal controls that broke down that caused that, so we did bring that to everybody's attention, and hopefully those types of things will not happen in the future. Is there any questions on that particular finding before I move on?
Did the vendor bill 3 times?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
That's what I wanted to know.
That was control one that broke down. The second control was the approval process here, and the third control was there supposedly, within our one solution system, when it sees a duplicate payment, it's supposed to pop up, and that was missed as well. So again, we talked about that with all the parties involved. Okay. Other than that, most of this was fairly clean, except we did have one instance where we look for vendors that have the same address. And in this instance, we discovered 2 CARES Act grants from last year where we had 2 addresses that were the same, but the vendor name was different. And when we did some investigating, we determined that the entities were actually owned by the same individuals, but both got $15,000 grants. So we thought that was something that was worth further investigation, which we did. We brought to the attention of Mr. Barron and Tina Smith out at DCED, who made the decisions on those. And they investigated as well with us, and they determined that the entity, while there were some anomalies, they did not take any action with regard to the grants themselves. Is there any questions on that particular one? Okay. Other than that, the rest of that engagement was fairly clean. We didn't find anything of note in there. Okay, and with that, I will move on to the next one, which is our cash collections process for emergency management. This is another agreed-upon procedure engagement. We do these on a periodic rotating basis to make sure that every department that accepts cash is subject to the proper internal controls. They're really quick in and out type of processes. And the only finding we had there was that they were not stamping their envelopes with money that was coming in, so we couldn't determine whether or not they were actually depositing it on the same day as they got it in, which is one of the county policies. So they bought a date stamp and were using it, and so all of that has been resolved and cleared as well. Any questions on that report? Thank you. We'll move on to Criminal Division Agency Fund. Now, this is a performance audit, which is something we do every 4 years, and it's a full department audit, not just the internal controls over cash, so it's much more lengthy and involved. The good part about it is that after all of the work we did there, we found that there were no material or significant findings. So kudos to Ms. Fisher, who is the clerk of courts there, and there were no findings that have to be noted. So I'm assuming there would be no questions on that one. The next one was another agreed-upon procedure engagement. This is something that DCD asked us to do because a number of grants were allowed to be given to a couple of entities, the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce and Historic Bethlehem. They're attempting to become a Historic Bethlehem heritage entity, nationally and internationally known. And so some grants were given out to be able to pursue that, and they asked us to, for each round of those grants, for us to do a process to make sure that all the money was used as agreed upon. And in this case, we just found one small, minor technical issue, and all the rest of that was fine, and the money was used as it was intended to be, and on a timely basis. Any question on that one?
Yeah, may I ask
Yes,
one?
Mr. Kusin?
What's the status of that? It's been going on for several years now. Have we heard, it's what, UNESCO
As I understand
World
it,
Heritage?
this was just the first, I think it was on hold, obviously, due to COVID and all of that. I think this is one of at least 3 grants that we're going to be looking at, and 2 of them still have not closed, so they're still in the process of using that money to apply for that status, and I honestly don't know what the ultimate outcome is or has been. I don't think it has been completely determined yet, but that's what the goal was, and that's what this money is being used for.
Yeah, and I agreed with the goal. I mean, to become a UNESCO World Heritage Site opens up a world of
Sure.
tourism above and beyond what we currently have there. I guess, you know, we really haven't had any updates from them, and I understand this last year's been difficult. Mr. Barron, did you know anything that's going on with that?
Would you mind? They have just asked, Mr. Barnett and Charlene Doncic-Mowers has just asked if they can come down and give you an update in the near future about what's going on with World Heritage.
Amazing, thank
Okay.
you.
We will be looking at the grants as asked by DCD when they are completed and the money has been all dispersed. Okay? All right, the next one is another agreed-upon procedure engagement, which is the jail commissary and inmate telephone. We have to do that every year as an agreed-upon procedure engagement, and every 4 years as a full performance audit. In fact, this is the year we will be doing it as a full performance audit, but this is last year's audit. And we really didn't find much of concern there. There was one situation where, well, we looked at a computer tablet that was purchased by an inmate, and there wasn't a receipt for that, but there was a reason for that because it wasn't considered a commodity, so it wasn't on the list, but there was no issues with regard to that. The only other thing with regard to this is that in the request for proposal for Keefe, who runs that program out there, they're supposed to be giving the county or the prison, the jail, reports detailing any grievances that the inmates are lodging, and they currently aren't doing that, and I don't think they have been for years. They have a procedure in place that they work directly with the inmates, and there hasn't been any issues with regard to that. But we noted it as a finding simply because it does not jive up with what's in their original request for proposal. And I'm not sure if the next request for proposal will just delete that because they've got a different procedure in place, but that's what we noted. Any question on that?
There's two. Mr. Heckman first.
Yeah, hey, Tony, by the way, when I said somebody was here when the Human Services, you know I was referring to you.
I know you were, because you know my age is
Oh.
up there, yes.
No, you're a very young man.
Thank you.
Anyway, I don't need to tell you, but as you did this jail commissary and inmate telephone, over the years, you know, this has been the bane of
I hear some
accounting.
groaning over there.
Do you overall find that now they have, despite some errors, you're at the end of it is what concerned me when you said there's something in place and they're not following it. But I don't need to tell you that this has been at times problematic over the years. For some reason over there. Does the whole system, from an accountant's point of view, look a bit tighter now than
Well, you
maybe
know,
historically?
It's a better question to ask us when we go through the entire performance audit. With regard to when we do an agreed upon procedure, we're just looking, spot checking at actual transactions. With the transactions, I think Gary, who did this audit, didn't find that there was anything really of concern. They seem to have the process down better, and they're retaining documentation well enough that we can properly do our investigations when we go out and do that. I don't know whether or not there is a satisfaction level with Keefe or anything like that from the jail point of view. That's not part of the scope of this engagement. Might be when we do the performance audit.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, in the past, let's put it this way. We weren't aware necessarily that anybody was intentionally doing something nefarious or money was going here or there. It was just people weren't following up.
Right.
Or they weren't following a procedure. And I guess
Well,
I'll wait for your full
I've
audit.
been around long enough that both, I remember when the commissary was a physical commissary out there, and that was much more in the way of a problematic situation with regard to controls. Now you have an external body bringing in these goods to these inmates, and it's much better controlled than when you had a physical commissary out there.
Okay.
But I know there has been even issues with the outside vendor as well. I don't think we noted anything in this engagement where there's anything of real concern. But like I said, we will be doing the full performance audit later this year.
Later this year?
Yeah, we'll be doing it in the October timeframe if we have just had a retirement in our office, so things are kind of in flux, but we will be doing that this year.
Thank you. That was all for me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, thank you again. You referenced the RFP from 2015, so that's 6 years ago. What's the status of the contract?
That I honestly don't know. That's, again, something we might look at when we do the full performance audit as to whether or not that's one of those evergreen things that just keeps rolling over, or do they do a new RFP after how many years? That's not part of the agreed upon procedure. So that's something we would look at is that contract just rolled over year to year, or is there an absolute dead end date where they have to do a new request for proposal and search for new vendors? I honestly can't answer that question in the bounds of this particular agreed upon procedure. You'd have to ask somebody out at the jail what that process is. You're right, 2015 is going back a little bit.
Yeah, it's 6 years. I don't recall what the contract length was. Often we put, renewals at the, if the administration wants to, they get an automatic renewal, but 6 years seems somewhat lengthy, so that's
We've had
why.
longer in other areas, but.
Yeah, I know the jail contract was just 10 that this
Right.
council voted on,
Right.
but
again, something we always look at that kind of thing when we do our full performance audit with regard to the contracting process. So that might be, again, something we'll give
All
you
right,
more
well,
information
and we
on
could
that.
have our staff look it up too.
Yeah,
So I
they
just
can.
was wondering if you knew. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on that one?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay. Move along, please.
Okay, the next three are simple hotel tax audits. The first one is, there are some hotels that provide so little money to the county that we do them all in a group, and we call it our non-site visits, and we do those in a 2-year rotation. And that's this particular one here. Unfortunately, there was one hotel here, the Kirkridge Motel, that didn't respond to our inquiries. So we weren't able to actually do any real comparison to make sure that their receipts match up with what they sent us. Again, it's an agreed-upon procedure engagement, so at this point, we just give the information to Fiscal Affairs and let them follow up on it if they choose to. Again, the money that they provide to us, I don't believe is what anybody would call material, but, and it's very possible that, of course, due to COVID, that there are concerns that maybe they're not in proper operation, but they just hadn't responded to our inquiries. Other than that, there's really nothing in this of any concern.
May I? I misunderstood. Did you say you had some that were non-compliant, non-responsive?
Yes, one was Kirkridge Inn. They did not return the verification
have
form. We sent a
made-
verification
right.
form out to them to provide us
Sure.
with their information, and then we compare it to the county's records, and they did not respond. And again, our bullet point here says that consequently, we were unable to compare their remittances to their records. So we were unable to actually do the normal procedures we do for that particular entity.
Will you do that again, next round?
Yeah.
They're gonna get a pass?
I'd have to look at it. We usually do these in 2-year rotations. We do half of them 1 year and then half of them the next year, and then that first group doesn't get done until 2 years from now. Since they hadn't responded, it's a good thought. We might add Kirkridge into this year again and see if they respond this
Thanks.
time.
Yeah.
And actually, Fiscal Affairs can also, if they choose to, contact them at any time and ask for their cooperation. Okay? Okay, and the last two are bed and breakfasts, the Lafayette Inn. Again, we do a number of procedures out there, and it's an agreed-upon procedure engagement, and we just try to look at their remittances and make sure that the remittances are what they should have been. And both of these are minor. The Lafayette Inn ended up, because of their different accounting methods, ending up owing us $42.13. And the Sarah Mansion ended up owing us, I think, even less. That would be $11.48. Or no, we owed them. There we go. We owed them. So it's a net of 30-some dollars. And like I said, that happens sometimes as well. Any questions on either one of those?
I have a question. The
Please.
Lafayette Inn, that's stories, but the question specifically for you, Tony, is what's the situation? Is that still, that was a hotel, but then it sort of became apartments?
No, I think you're thinking of the wrong entity. The Lafayette Inn is on College Hill. It's a kind of swanky bed and breakfast.
It's on Cattell Street.
It's on Cattell Street.
Yeah. Oh,
You're thinking of the Hotel Lafayette down here on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the Hotel Lafayette.
Yes, the
My
same name,
mistake.
different entity altogether.
My mistake.
The only
That is a
difference,
big
I do believe the Lafayette Inn just changed hands. I do know that.
All right. Yeah, cross that off. It didn't happen.
Yeah, I know what you mean with the Hotel Lafayette. It's a
I'm-
completely different.
Other than that, where's the Rustic Inn located? Anything named the Rustic Inn?
The Rustic Inn is one of the ones that we do, and I honestly don't know where it is. I don't do the audit, so
I usually know where most of these places are, even if I get the names wrong.
it's some rustic place.
It's some rustic place. Thank you, Mr.
Are you
Sabino.
talking
That's one
about
of
the
most-
rustic dreams?
That's one of those clarifying answers
Yes,
I think
Ron, what
I've
can I
heard
say?
in 3 years. All right, I'm finished.
Okay.
Anyone else? Questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a resolution here, and I'm just going to, first of all, it's a community economic development, to review the American Rescue Plan for some money that got allocated for grants, and there's a list on here. 2 pages, 2, 3, 2 pages, page and a half of grants. And this will be for tomorrow night's meeting. Please review. Any comments or questions? I think there's a total of the amount, 1,348,25. I have one question, and I know Mr. Barron has the answer.
I'm sure he does.
I appreciate you coming up to the mic.
Mr. Barron has the answer.
Was any of these second rounds?
No, so none of these folks have gotten any money yet. We're
Wow.
still in that window of new businesses who have applied.
That's really kind of nice that these folks get a shot at it now. They didn't have any before. Thank you.
Can I ask
Mr.
a question?
Yes, please.
Follow up on yours.
Okay.
Steve, are we, like, I know we went through rounds, and you said these are new. Are more requests still coming in? Because I'm just curious where we stand with requests vis-à-vis.
The requests are slowing down. These
Okay.
businesses, for your approval, will meet the funding. From some of the prior rounds, 1, 2, and 3, there are businesses that still haven't sent in the required data yet, where they were approved. They just need to get us a W-9, or there's some sort of paperwork that they need to get to us. So we're still working with some of them. There are not many of them, but there are.
Is there a time frame for them? Like, let's say we approve someone in the first round and they haven't gotten you what you need. I mean, do they have a drop-dead date?
No, because they're approved, so the money is reserved for them. At some point, if they don't respond or they're shut down, we might recommend another grant to you from
So the
another
feds,
business.
and this is helping me understand, we got the money through the feds. Even if they don't cash the check, or we don't get the check to them because they give us, there's no expiration date once those funds have been appropriated to the county. I mean, we can sit on them.
And so
Or-
if somebody gets a check and they don't cash it, there is a whole escheat process that goes along with that. We hope we don't get to that point. There was 1 or 2 checks that we did have to reissue for the business, the U.S. mail and stuff like that.
So the feds don't have they haven't given us, this money has to be used and spent by date.
It's once we, from an accounting standpoint,
Yes.
once we actually issue the check and we've done our due diligence on the business, that's it.
Okay, all right. So if they cash it, whenever they cash it, that if there's no money there, that's not the county, that would be,
Yeah,
I don't know, I'm trying to understand the process.
No,
all.
that's, I mean, when you get into the checks and the way it goes through and it's cheated. So for example, Mr. Spadoni gets a $15,000 check and he doesn't need to cash it, or he doesn't cash it.
Oh, he doesn't need that.
After a certain period of time, that check goes to the state treasury. The state treasury will hold that in Mr. Spadoni's name. The state treasury holds it in Mr. Spadoni's name till he claims it. That could be forever. But we have disposed of it. We have gone through the correct accounting processes to escheat ourselves from the money. So therefore, there's no pushback from the state, or from the federal government, I'm sorry.
The feds had sent us any, apparently not, that, I mean, in terms of this has to happen, other than our restrictions and whatnot, so that's fine. That's all I had, I was just curious. Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Bill?
Quick,
Question?
quick
Yes.
question for Mr. Barron while he's still standing. How much
Mr.
money?
Spadoni never applied, by the way,
For the record,
for the record.
for the record.
How much money is left in this program for future applicants? Do you know?
There's probably, if I had to guess, and it's just a ballpark number, there's probably anywhere between 12 and $13 million left. So when that new round opens up for people who gotten before, we will, we'll go through that money relatively quickly because there is a need out there. But we wanted to make sure that businesses who hadn't applied, that, you know, they've shaken the trees, the chamber's been out, walking the streets, you know, up and down main streets looking for any business possible that may need help and assistance.
The other question, I don't know if you can answer, what is a pudding bar?
You know,
It makes pudding.
They make
I know
pudding, I
you've
guess.
lost a lot of weight and everything, but I'm just,
Yeah, it's,
what's,
some of
like an
these
olive
trends
bar.
that you see, I don't get it, but
Yeah.
is it actual like
It's pudding
Jello or?
with stuff.
No
It's
offense, Mr.
good.
Kusick, but it's pudding bar.
I mean, I've never heard of it.
Bar where there's pudding.
Do you-
Mr. Barron's bicycling 80 miles a day. He doesn't do pudding anymore. so.
I'd never heard of it. I don't know what a pudding bar is. I thought it was something the
Well, you're
kids,
gonna have to
kids are doing
sashay down
now.
and check it out.
Yeah. Mr. Myers will go with you.
I just had one question,
Oh.
like an actual question. So the ones that are designated from Cherryville, is that like in Bushkill Township? Is that where we're,
I think Cherryville is Lehigh Township.
oh, Lehigh Township, okay.
Yes.
On the way, Mr. McGee's home.
I don't think we've seen that many from Cherryville.
Uh,
There just isn't that many.
It's a very small area. Some have been on there from Bushkill Township. Some might have a different mailing address. There might be a resident who has a business somewhere else, but their residence is Cherryville or Bushkill Township. We've had a good representation from throughout the county.
And were all these businesses, like, were they through the chamber, that the chamber was able to?
The
knock on
only,
door
the
and
only
get
way
them?
to apply for our grants is through the chamber website. So
Right,
they
right,
can
right.
go through, they have to do a whole self-certification, but yes, all of them came through the chamber.
Okay, great.
Some of them called DCED, I should say, but we direct them right to the chamber's website.
Okay.
Was anybody turned away that applied?
There were some businesses that applied that weren't in the county.
Okay.
There were some businesses that, so we have focused on businesses that have storefronts and online presence. The gig economy is not part of these grants. So in that regard, yes, some businesses have been
Okay.
turned away, but it's based on the guides we've had previously. And when we ran out of funding from the first round of money, all those businesses that were there, they were brought to you previously, like, are you still open? Do you have a need still? Then this is what you need to do to get the money, get a grant.
So that's what you're checking on the W-9, that they did business,
Correct.
that they
yes.
conducted business
Yes.
during that time period.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay, question, Mrs. Margot
Not a
Hefner?
question, but maybe Mr. Barron would like to outline what we detailed as the timeline the other day. Didn't we clarify a timeline on this process?
What do you mean for what check?
Because I sure don't.
I'll let tomorrow night when we talk about them more as a time, let the county executive talk about that tomorrow night. I'll have an update for you on all that.
Seeing no further questions, can we get a movement on this for tomorrow night's council meeting?
So moved.
Mr. Heckman, thank you. Okay, next resolution up is, okay, this is for the election ballot printing services, and it's a contract. And it's for $108,224.88 with NPC. And Mr. Dertinger is at the podium, and he wants, please, turn it over to you.
Yes, good evening. This was put out for RFP. We were not necessarily that excited with our incumbent. With Act 77 and many of the changes that continue to take place, we wanted to make sure that we had a vendor who could be both responsive and have a quicker turnaround. We went through, I believe, 3 or 4 responses, and this was not just the best price, but this is also a Pennsylvania-based printer.
Is this just for the upcoming election?
No, 5 years.
Yeah, this would be for moving forward.
Right. But, the-
So long as they remain responsive.
okay. But we're retaining them for the 5, but is the price for the 5, or is it for just the upcoming this year?
This is for this year.
Just this year, the price is for this
Yeah,
year? But we're retaining them for, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Wait a second. The price here says 108,224. That's for the whole 5 years.
No.
That's what it says on this paper. It says in 2021, we paid $12,952. In 2022, primary and general, $22,898.63.
Okay, you have something that I don't, unfortunately.
2024, 2025, total base bid is $108,000.
Oh, this is for, my apologies, this is just for the ballots, so yes.
Okay, for all 5 years. Got it.
Thank you for clarifying.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
We have typical language in here where either the vendor or the county can opt out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and that's, the previous vendor had been for a 5-year period. They didn't make the 5 years.
Cool. Thank you. That's all.
So there's a prenup agreement.
Well, it could be an all our contract, usually.
Mr. Kusin?
Not so much a question, but a comment. I did have the opportunity to meet with this vendor at the CCAP conference, talk with them at length about this. They were impressive for me. They're not here today. I wish they would have been. But I think based on what I've heard from them and other counties, I think they'll do a good job. So I'll be supporting this.
Do you know who was the previous vendor? No.
Unfortunately, I know him by first name
Okay,
only at
sure.
this point, so I
That's
don't.
fine. Okay. Any other questions? Maybe we'll find that out for tomorrow. That'd be great. Any other questions? Motion to move?
So moved.
Thank you. And the last one is, so this is the Tyler Technologies for software for taxes, software, and appraisal tax and software. And it's for a letter of agreement. This would be for tomorrow night's council meeting. It looks like a 3-year contract, $911,000. Mr. Barron is at the podium.
This is our billing software. So what it is our billing and collection software that we use in the revenue department. It integrates with the Tyler Technologies, the ISO world we have. It's how we record all of our deeds. It's how we do our assessments. And then that all ties together to do the billing and collections of the $104 million that the county collects every year in taxes. That being the case, it is a competitive negotiation because they provide the sole source for this. And it is a 3-year renewal. We do this every 3 years in this
Gotcha.
software.
Gotcha. Steve, Mr. Barron, did they push it out into the county's website where all the tax information is on for all the properties? Do they get involved in that too, or?
So, no, the assessment portion and what we do for assessment and how the assessment, like how the numbers work for our property evaluations, that's all put out on our county website by the assessment department. They don't necessarily push that out.
Okay.
You actually get a tax bill in the mail. We're required by law to send you a tax bill in the mail. It's generated by this system.
Okay. Any questions, Mr.?
Again, another comment, they've been a associated with CCAP. They come to all of our assessment and taxation committee meetings. You know, I talk with these guys all the time. They're our incumbent vendor, and I've been happy with the job that they've done, and so I'll be supporting this as well.
Any other questions? Motion to move?
Motion.
Okay, so moved. And that is all I have for the committee agenda. Is there anybody else that has anything that they would like to add? Comments, questions? A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, everyone.